Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Pete.
And we've got a very, very important episode today. If you were with us last week, Pete and I discussed Season 1 of For All Mankind. And we had a number of recommendations and ideas as to how the writers could take the show from good to great. And having now watched Season 2, Pete, were we spot on, or what do you think?
So what's interesting to me is it's almost as if they heard our podcast in the last 2 weeks or whenever we're recording this.
Did the entire season 2.
And then reshot the entire season 2. And it's because all of a sudden there was no drama at home. All of a sudden there's drama at home. There was no elements of espionage or suspense. All of a sudden, that's the only thing driving season 2. It was good. Like there's still elements of it that I'm not a fan of. We'll get there. But we'll get there. Spoiler alert. Let's give the spoiler alerts up front now. Usually we get okay. And this won't be as deep a dive.
Let's improve a little bit.
Because we've covered a lot of Foundation's characters already. But yeah, you're right. Let's do the quick spoiler alert, and then the quick and the dirty of it is that it's 5 years later. They've got Jamestown is now like an established moon base. They've got like a couple dozen people up there. They're doing their science experiments.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everyone has mustaches. Everyone's starting to get gray hair. Everyone is the hair and makeup people. Yep.
Gordo's put on a bit of weight, but he's somehow still an astronaut, which blows my mind. It's in that. I like that there's a time jump. You learn that Joel Kinnaman's character, Ed, and his wife have adopted a baby, not a baby now, a Vietnamese girl who's she's looking at colleges now. So, there's been a significant movement in everyone's life. Gordo's ex-wife has married someone else. Gordo's living on his own. Times are changing. That's exactly right. Times are changing, right?
Times are changing. So one of the major things when we pick it up on, the first episode was the issue of this solar flare, right? Or the solar storm. And, it's something that I actually thought that this was going to be a more integral part of the entire season 2, because obviously we see that some of the astronauts in Jamestown were exposed to a lot of the radiation. And I thought this was going to be like the major catalyst for change throughout season 2. And it was not, but I'm not disappointed by that. But I didn't see the storyline, kind of threaded through the subsequent episodes. How did you feel about it?
I think you're spot on. I think what was good about the solar flare was that it was not just a scientific/natural phenomenon, but it was also something that was like the driving force for episode 1, but then it stops because then it's kind of like, okay, here's the push in space, and then everyone continued moving forward on that basis, So it didn't need to be, because then the espionage story picks up and continues driving the story forward. And there's a couple of subplots and B plots and C plots that are going forward. I think it was very skillfully done, because if they had followed through with the solar flare issue, I imagine what would have been the driving force of peace with the Soviets and unification with the Soviets at the end of the season would have been more based on man versus nature, versus how do we resolve our own problems.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is, it was a little bit of a lost opportunity, because I think that would have been a good kind of a season ending event, for example, in season 1. But I think that they kind of had it a little bit too soon in season 2, and it didn't really thread then to the following episodes, because I found that episode kind of like 2, episode 3, episode 4, while still interesting because, I had an attachment to the characters, there was nothing really happening. There was a lot of admin and home drama and backstory. I thought those episodes were just a little bit slow to watch. And then kind of the second half of that season, I thought just like went like bonkers. I thought it was just absolutely wild.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely wild. But you had to struggle through the first half a little bit.
Yeah. I think a lot of characters you saw growth. You saw the completion of Gordo's character arc, right? Like where he goes from this man who's afraid, who's constantly afraid, who's traumatized by what happened to him on the moon on his first go around, to overcoming his fears, to battling them with his sons, to battling getting himself in shape, and fighting his demons. You see a little bit of that for Tracy as well, where she's fighting her own demons as well. You just don't realize it because she's been living this glamorous life. Otherwise, she's with Ed McMahon and on Johnny Carson. So sorry, You see that you think that she's got the perfect life, but she clearly doesn't. And then you see that they've been combative towards each other for so long. But then that arc I thought was probably the most interesting non-space related dramatic arc, and quite possibly the best character arc. It's a shame that they both ended the way they did, right?
Yeah, I agree.
The season endings, and by ending I don't mean the last episode, but I mean like the last 3 or 4 episodes, had some of the greatest wins and some of the greatest losses for the show.
You just want to dive into the season ending episode, don't you?
I almost teared. I definitely. Yeah, that's right. I teared up. I teared up.
I agree.
With the Gordo and Tracy ending.
Did you cry?
Then I was
at any point.
But you know what it was is any emotional arc there, or feelings there was for me like overshadowed and overpowered by some of the nonsensical things that were happening on Earth, like furiously. So
it's actually kind of funny that we think that the episodes on the moon, those events are a little bit more realistic than all the nonsense on Earth. It's like Earthlings, like get your stuff together.
It's if you can get beyond the premise of setting up 2 rivaling moon bases on Earth, everything that happens on on the moon, everything else that happens on the moon makes 100% sense. And not just sense, but those are the kinds of things that would happen and you could see, and we're excited, right? You have your white M16 rifle toting Marines, right? Or so I
love the white M16.
Yeah, and it was just it was such a simple explanation. Why are they white? So they don't melt through your suit. That's it. And I was like, oh, okay, that's plausible. Yeah. Not white because we're trying to make it look sci-fi. Yeah. White because there's a practical reason for it.
Look badass.
Right?
So can we talk about some of the Earth issues?
Yeah, let's do it.
That slowed things down a little bit.
Yeah.
The first is you've got, as we mentioned, in episode 1, Molly was exposed to radiation. She's therefore removed from her moon appointment, deployed back to Earth, and takes over, Ed's job. Okay.
And takes over Ed's job because he wants to go back.
Yep.
Right. And that was one of the side plots, was that he was not quibbling with his wife, but there was a bit of tension with his wife that the only reason he's not up on the moon is because he feels responsibility for his son's death, even though that's 100% on Gordo and Tracy's kid.
Yeah.
And then he's always like, well, no, I have to protect you. It's my job.
So I mean, there's Ed's family, right? Karen. Those two obviously have a big blow up, and it's about their adopted daughter, who also wants to go to the Naval Academy, and they've got like a bunch of family shouting and crying and so forth, and that leads Ed to take the new role as a commander of the space shuttle, and then Molly takes his position. Then the second issue we've got is kind of this on again, off again relationship between Ellen and I can't remember what her girlfriend's name is. right?
Yeah, the ex-bartender. The bartender who was there in season 1.
So those two kind of have this on again, off again relationship. And Ellen is, fighting this very, I guess, not to minimize it, but I mean, it's kind of, like trite, I think, between can she stay in the closet as not a lesbian and continue with her dream job? Or should she give up her dream job and stay with her, the love of her life? And we see a little bit of this emotional tug of war. But to be honest, I feel like they didn't really give it the justice, that it deserved. I think they just kind of minimized it. And like I said, like they made it a little bit trite. They didn't really show this big tug of war. Obviously, she was, much more attached to her job than, her girlfriend. And that kind of like let itself play out.
Now, do you think they did that because they didn't want to deal with the potential quote unquote political ramifications of today's environment? Or do you think that's just like, we're not interested in this story because that's not what the show is about?
I don't know how they wrote it. But I have to say, I don't find that Ellen's girlfriend was a very compelling character. I feel like if she would have been, I feel like if she would have been like really owned that role and been more compelling, then maybe the writers would have had something to like chew on or think about, and maybe some things would have been rewritten. Maybe Ellen doesn't leave her job. Maybe she does come out, or maybe, she's a trailblazer in that way. But I felt, to be honest, whether it was, very boring writing or an actress who didn't really like capture the role in the way that could have been captured, it just wasn't like a compelling storyline. And it absolutely could have been, but I didn't feel like a lot of passion. I didn't feel a lot of love. I didn't feel a lot of sympathy. I always felt like Ellen was, the dominant person in that relationship, and she was driven by her job. And she said that she loved this person, but, like her actions always, said otherwise.
No, and rightfully so, in the sense that dominant in the sense that she's not just good at her job, she's excellent at her job. Right?
Yeah.
And when she steps into the role of the assistant to the director of the space agency, to NASA, and then eventually as the director of NASA, because, her boss has just been blown up by the Russians, right?
Yeah.
For me, that is a very... those were arcs to her story, or elements to her story, where she really proved her chops, not just as an actor, because she was very convincing, but also as a character, because she put her foot down, right? And even though she's an astronaut, there's with that position, and you saw that with Zeke in season 1. You had two roles, right? Am I an astronaut first and an administrator second, or am I an administrator first and then an astronaut second, right? And you see a little bit of that tug and war with Ed as well. So there was that tug of war here, but she steps into that plumb and she's like, listen, I am not an astronaut anymore. I'm an administrator and I'm going to do the job of this administration, right? Like, this is a role appointed to me by the president. And, we have that little back and forth with Reagan. So it comes as a bit of a shock to everyone in that room when she sides with the administration and with the Pentagon before she sides with, I can't remember the
DOD. Yeah, the Department of Defense. Yeah.
The abrasive science lady.
Margot, the abrasive science lady.
Yeah. So, you see that flip. And when you see that flip, you're just like, oh my God, okay, so she's actually being a badass, right? And I was really impressed by that. So, but yes, you're right.
There's a lot of character recycling in this show. If you look at the cast from, the beginning of this entire series until now, there, as you mentioned, there's a lot of story arcs for individuals, and a lot of them, are kind of minimized and then they come back. Goro, for example, minimized and comes back. Margot, minimized and comes back. Ed, minimized and comes back. Molly, minimized, maybe she's going to come back. So the same thing with Ellen, is I think there's a lot of character recycling in the show, because there's actually quite a bit of characters. We've talked about shows, for example, we talked about Foundation, where there's not that many characters that we actually know, either because they've died off or other circumstances. For All Mankind has a lot of characters that we've gotten to know well because they have 2 or 3 episodes really focused on that character, and then something happens and they're minimized, and then when they need them, then they come back. It's like they're really doing a lot of, I wouldn't say like a basketball team, they're doing a lot of substitution patterns, or maybe a hockey team, the line changes.
Yeah, I mean, they have a deep bench, right?
But it's
continue
the
sports metaphor.
It's getting a little bit thinner.
It is, but the reason, again, I think the reason it is because you see a time jump again. And at the end, we jump into the 80s, right?
Yeah.
No, 90s now?
Well, we're at the
90s,
end of Reagan.
90
right?
something.
Yeah, so we're like towards the end of the 80s, right?
I could have sworn it was either 85 or 95. I can't remember what the lower Chiron said at the end of the thing. And so you get a chance. You get a chance to see more characters get introduced sheerly by youth, right? Yeah. You saw a little bit of that with that young Air Force cadet who wears the Navy cap, who's Ed's co-pilot, and I think. I don't know, but I expect that he'll have a bigger role in season 3, right? Because he was still the young boy or the young man in season 2, and now we're talking 10 years. So he was treated a little bit like the greenhorn, right? Like a little young, a little inexperienced, but obviously very talented and capable, capable enough for the senior astronaut to pick him to be the right-hand man. By the way. Just going back, that little bit of drama was very disappointing and manufactured. The little Mexican standoff they had in space.
Yeah, and I think the ending was definitely overshadowed, right? I mean, what Ed did. Let's walk through it, right? So, there was
navigator, co-pilot,
a standoff between the Pathfinder between the Pathfinder shuttle, right? The Pathfinder shuttle, which had, some missiles on it that was capable of, some type of offensive or defensive, action. And then there was a separate, launch.
The Sea Dragon.
Shuttle,
that's right.
Something else, that had a nuclear weapon on, right? And it was the Sea Dragon, right? So it was then the Pathfinder shuttle piloted by Ed with his, 2 supporting cast versus, this Russian, the equivalent to the Pathfinder. And basically, the Russians were blocking the moon, saying to Ed, look, you've got to get rid of Sea Dragon, otherwise we're going to fire on you. And they had apparently the high ground. They were on the dark side of the moon. They had everything kind of in their favor. And, Ed, I thought at first we kind of thought that Ed was going to fire on the Russians first. And as you alluded to, that was a Mexican standoff where it seemed like there was a small mutiny by the crew of Pathfinder trying to talk Ed out of what they believed to be his intention to start a war or to fire, on the Russians first. And then it plays out very, very quickly, almost too quickly for me to see until I went back again.
Like you could have, it was a blink and you miss it moment for sure. For sure. Yes. And you're right, they glossed over the significance of that.
Yes. But the significance is that, tell me if I'm wrong, but Ed decided to destroy Sea Dragon, thereby removing the threat that the Russians were so worried about, correct?
Yeah. And this is a moment of personal growth for him because all season you've seen him side with the DOD.
Yes.
And say that, well, we need to send machine guns up there. We need to send weapons up there. We need to protect. So you fully went into that standoff expecting him to destroy the Russian ship, Baran, or Bazan, I can't remember, right? Whatever it was.
Yes.
And that's what it and frankly speaking, after he fired the missiles, for a split second, it looked like the missiles were going to go to the Russian ship.
Yeah. I think it was written out in the way that we've described it, it's a very good scene, and it had a lot of drama and suspense in it. But I feel like the potential mutiny was given too much attention and drawn out. And what Ed actually did to destroy Sea Dragon was really kind of minimized. And it wasn't kind of until after the fact that you realized the significance of what he did. And I think it was super cool, but I think it just wasn't captivating enough because I felt like it was a little bit rushed.
And not just rushed, but I think also, and maybe not rushed, but I think it was overshadowed by the fact that you had 2 duct tape clad astronauts.
Oh, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
Yeah, but
right?
I mean that was exactly what was happening, right? So you see that their nuclear reactor. That
but hold on. Can I say something to our listener or listeners?
Of course.
Listener, I messaged Pete and I said, Pete, I just finished season 2. Please tell me when you finish it. We need an emergency episode.
Yeah.
And I did it by message because I think I was still in tears. I was really, really sincerely touched by this. We'll get to it. Not just the emotion, but I thought the entire scene was just so exceptionally well done. As far as I am aware, in any TV series, I think it's one of my top 2, top 3 season or series moments? Endings. I think just endings. It was amazing. You want to walk us through it? You want to walk us through it and recap it?
So the quick recap is that the Russians have now invaded Jamestown on the moon, and they've taken over who they think is everybody. But what they don't realize is that Gordo and Tracy are not hiding out, but at the time they were. They had a special place that they went together just to get away from everyone else.
They're smoking in the boys' room.
And they're smoking, and that's when they when the station gets taken over. They realize what's happening, but they can't do anything about it. They're basically in the galley. They can't do anything. And then they finally get through to NASA through some old computer console, and they're told that the nuclear generator that powers the station, the coolant line has been cut, so it's overheating.
That nobody knew about. Until now, right? It was secretly a nuclear reactor,
right?
A nuclear generator.
So they find out that it's overheating, and that of course, if it goes critical, the whole station blows up and everyone. So there's this moment where you're like, oh well, obviously you can see where this is going. This has been Gordo's story. What they're going to do is they're going to somehow, because you see him do a training montage earlier in the season. So you're just like, okay, well, this is what he's been training for. He's not just going to overcome his fears, but he's going to save the day. And the way they save the day is, about 20 meters away or 25 meters away from the station outside, there's the panel that can help them reset the cooling system and get it restarted. But they don't have any spacesuits, so he's convinced that he can save the day by literally running out there, holding his breath, and restarting it and running back, right? And obviously everyone thinks that he's crazy, but then they realize that they don't really have a choice. And then you realize that Tracy's going to suit up too, and what they do by suit up, I mean they find some rolls of duct tape and they wrap their bodies in duct tape, like super tight.
They do have a mask. Very conveniently, they have 2 masks, right? I mean, this is the critical part as well, is that there are 2 masks. They're locked in the kitchen or hidden away in the kitchen area.
Right.
And the only things that they have at their disposal is apparently a lot of duct tape and the 2 masks. And as you mentioned, Gordo decides, look, I've got to do this. I'm going to save everybody. This is my destiny. And Tracy says, look, dude, you can never do this alone.
Yeah.
I'm in this with you. And they decide to do it together. They wrap themselves up in duct tape, which, to be honest, I wasn't really feeling like a whole lot of emotion during that scene. I mean, maybe I missed it. There should have been more build-up. But I thought that was, they were just kind of going through it. And it didn't hit me yet, the importance of that moment. But then, of course, when they, kind of went out there together, I thought that was just an incredible scene from an emotional perspective. And the way that it was filmed with no sound.
No sound. That's what I really like about this show is they're not Star Warsing or Star Trekking it up.
It would have been too easy to put in like a U2 soundtrack on that and have like a sad song or Coldplay or something, and let that kind of overcome the moment. But I love that there was no sound and it was just totally quiet, watching those 2 bounce, step by step. And seeing, how whether it's the atmosphere, the heat, is slowly destroying, the thin layer of duct tapes that they had to them, how it was starting to, rip their skin off. I thought it was so dramatic, how they worked together as a team to whatever, plug, unplug, flip switches together.
And there's it was really heart-wrenching because then they make it back inside the hab.
But let me ask you, before we get there, did you, when we're watching, we knew that they were going to get there. We knew that they would, flip the switch and so on and so forth. After they did that, what was your thought in terms of one, both, or none of them would kind of make it back okay?
So my feeling has always been that the best moments in any TV show, or not just show, but in movie, is when the audience's expectations are subverted organically, right? Not for the sake of it, but just when it happens. So the entire season, you had this arc where you see Gordo's rise, and so you're just like, well, this is the natural place for Gordo's story to end. So I thought Tracy was going to die. I thought that out of the two of them, I didn't expect, I didn't think that neither of them would die. But at the same time, I didn't expect, I thought that, Tracy's not going to make it. She's going to end up being the hero that he wanted to be, but that's not going to drive him into a spiral. That's going to just convince him to go become a greater man, right? And for that split second, when they both make it into the hab, you're just like, oh, expectation definitely subverted. They both made it, right? Like, it's a little too Hollywood, but that's great, right? And then that you go back into space and you see Ed blow up the Sea Dragon, and you're just like, oh my God, there's a lot of tension. And then at the same time, oh my God, we forgot. You have Danielle meeting with the Russian astronaut and shaking hands together. They've decided they screw it. We're going to do the Soyuz Apollo mission, or Apollo Soyuz. We don't care what's going on. No one is up here. We're 100 miles from the Earth's surface. NASA can't stop us. The Russian Space Agency can't stop us. And you know what? We'll deal with the consequences when we get home, right? And, of course, that turns out to be the defining moment that actually ends up saving both agencies, right? Yeah. Awesome. So it's almost like and then you just see you see the two of them lying together back to back, or like inside the doorway of the hab, and you're just like, I'm not sure if they're alive, not alive, but then, the other astronauts, then they see that the space station is released, the Russians leave, and they go and they find the bodies, and then you're just like, it comes crashing down. That's the moment where it all came crashing down for me.
Then we get back to Gordo and Trace, right?
Was just where you're like, there was a brief moment of respite where you're thinking, oh my God, they've survived. They've both survived, or... I thought they'd open the hab and then you'd see Gordo there, tears streaming down his face, and Tracy dead, or the other way around. And it's kind of like this bittersweet moment where they fought for the entirety of their adult lives and then they're made up in a grand way. But no, they both go.
So I have to say, I went through so many different, it's not a long scene. It's probably 30 seconds, which is nice because that matches with reality. Like that was a 15-second mission that took 28 seconds, and I think the scene was exactly that long. So when they were running back to the hab, obviously we saw that they were like in pretty bad shape physically. When Gordo fell, I kind of was thinking he would just like push her and she'd live, and like you said, that was for me kind of like the completion of a story arc, and I kind of saw it that way. She's the hero again, and like Gordo's redeemed in her eyes. But then when she fell, I thought they would just kind of like, I thought they were done. I kind of thought they would just kind of like lay down on the moon surface together and just kind of like die out there together. And I thought that was a pretty powerful ending as well. But then when they kind of made it up, then I was like super confused, which is like, will they make it in? Like, and then I was like, can they even live? Or are they going to die outside the hatch, or how's it going to happen?
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly. That's why I felt like it was such a bittersweet moment, because it gave you that little ray of hope that they're going to make it. Yeah. Right? Only to have it snatched away.
Yeah. But I thought it was an exceptional scene. Really, I think that scene, the only other thing that I can remember, even remotely as powerful, was kind of the series ending episode of The Americans. I don't know if you saw it. That was also a very powerful scene to me. I think those two were probably like the best endings that I've seen in a long time. But this one really did it for me, and I'm happy that we got to see it, and we did a quasi-emergency episode about it. But I think it was a great way to end season 2, and there's a lot of questions now for season 3, because what's been missing in all this is that now there's a big espionage element that's going to center around Margot, right?
Oh yeah, that to me, because I thought that was such an, like, you kind of saw it coming in terms of the relationship, right? But then you also you're quickly slapped back into reality by saying, oh, those evil Russians, they've always got an ulterior motive to something, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of trite with Margot as well. Margot's kind of that character that they've really pegged into a role, and she's always stayed within that role, which is super serious, a little bit socially awkward.
A little bookish.
Yeah, you can tell that she probably needs, she's not averse to like a little bit of flattery and compliments, and it was a little bit dangerous, when her Soviet counterpart, started to compliment the color of her jacket, when they got stuck in that little lunar module, when they're trying to figure something out, and that's kind of the camera system. Yeah, that's kind of where you saw like there's maybe some budding romance here. There's something. And I think now we've seen that. I think her Russian counterpart is generally not a bad guy. I don't feel like he's intentionally manipulative, but he's somehow involved in this scheme now. And it seems like the impression that we have is that season 3, he's going to somehow try to, extract confidential information from her, manipulate her, threaten her. Maybe she defects, maybe he defects, but this seems now that it's going to be like a major spy versus spy storyline in season 3.
Yeah, so exactly. And I think here's the thing, right? This is where the writers, and I know they're listening because they clearly reshot the entire series in 2 weeks. But I think this is where you have a great opportunity to subvert expectations one more time, which is for her when she goes to that conference in London to meet this guy, right? This is where the opportunity to subvert expectations is. She goes in there with the CIA fully knowing that he's potentially a spy, right? Or that he's setting her up. And in fact, they immediately start working on maybe bringing him in. You know what I mean? Like, so instead of her, because that for me would be the truly cliched thing to do, which is to say, you have this super bookish, super successful, manipulated woman in power. Exactly. Throw a little bit of the male gaze at her and, we'll woo her, and then she'll like any stereotypical woman of that age, she'll throw out all the secrets in one night, after a night of passionate lovemaking, right? Which is the most cliched old school stereotype, right? And I'm not saying she needs to be like a super spy. If anything, I think it'll be really funny and realistic. And funny not in a ha-ha way, but funny like in a dark humor way, to show her bumbling around, like trying to be suave when she clearly isn't, and she's got like this bulky tape recorder hidden away, things like that. Which, by the way, I mean, I find it really funny. You're now talking about really advanced technology, but you can still see remnants of like really old school 80s era tech, which is like really bulky and weird. Right? So, like, you get to see the birth of cell phones in the show, like in the 70s and 80s and things like that. So, like, there are so many things that they could do that way, because now the question is going to be what's happening on Mars, right? We don't know. We know that next season is going to be all about Mars, nothing about the moon. Or we expect anyway, because why would you deal with small potato stuff when you've got the big cheese on the plate, right? The question is, what is the race about now? Because theoretically, after that handshake with Daniel and the Russian cosmonaut, the race is kind of over, which is to say, we both made it to the moon. It's not about who came first now. It's about who's there and who's the best, right?
And what are they doing, right?
And exactly. What is the purpose of being on Mars, right? What is the benefit of all this espionage? What are the events? Especially since there were moments where you saw Margot, who values life more than she values politics, and she was like, "Listen, there's a defect on your space shuttle design that you copied from us. And so she hints at that and then outright tells the space guy and ingratiates herself, or at least ingrains some of that trust, which is why I think this turn where she turns out to be the spy in disguise would be far more interesting to me.
Can I throw something out there? Because, right now there's only, it's not good versus evil, but it's US versus Russia, right? And we've kind of, seen this clash now for, a good season and a half. I think we need... Yeah,
exactly.
I think we need a third party. I think...
Oh, man, you know who I thought it was going to be? I thought it was going to be China for a
I agree. I think we need to somehow... I see why they didn't bring them in season 2, because there's a lot going on, right? But I think we need to introduce a third party. And I think that we need to see the US and Russia either cooperate with each other, or, they need to... one of them needs to team up with, whether it's China, whether it's India, whether it's, EU, which isn't really compelling.
Because you saw a little bit of cooperation with the European Space Agency at the beginning. I think a little bit of element. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's going to be a little bit of an element of the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of situation.
I think it's just not going to be like, when you just read it out loud, I'm not that compelled by another season of US versus Russia. Who can get to Mars first? Who can, to be honest, I'm sure you can build some intrigue, especially because, this issue with Margot and her suitor. But again, whether it's going to be espionage or disinformation or something, like, I feel like that storyline has been told before. I'd like to see something else where there's, 2 versus 1, or, some other type of triangular intrigue, just to add like a new party to the mix.
How brilliant would it be is if in that, and the end of episode 1 of season 3, you end on seeing a flag on Mars, and it's the Russian, the Chinese flag, or like an Indian flag, or whatever superpower you want to make it flag.
I think that you could have done it in hysterical. There could have been a different way to do it as well, which is, there could have been this thing where there's, this, Sea Dragon, right? Where both sides said, hey, Sea Dragon's not ours. Like, no, you've got nukes. And you find out that it doesn't belong, both US and Russia were telling the truth. It actually belonged to China, right? It is Sea Dragon, right? So, that would have been something cool as well, where you're not sure who is telling the truth, right? Both sides denying that they have nukes. And then you find out, oh, actually, classic case of miscommunication. They're actually both telling the truth. It doesn't belong to either of them. You see like the explosion of Sea Dragon, and you just see like this piece of like Chinese flag, shrapnel, kind of floating.
Because at the moment, I feel like all the tension in space,
and even on Earth,
comes from
the only tension on Earth is, to be honest, Ed's marriage, which is a total disaster.
Oh, Jesus! It's the most terrible kind of disaster, which is to say, we have a relatively good actress in Karen. What do we do with her? Oh, I know. Let's have her sleep with a high school kid.
Well,
he's in the bar.
He's going to university, and even weirder, weirder, it's her son's best friend, which makes some clear comparisons, right?
And it's the most stupid thing ever, because she had a strong, not arc, but she had a good story in the sense that she went from this housewife of an astronaut to a bar owner, and not just a bar owner, but a successful bar owner. And then she's like, where the downfall started, in my mind, was she's for whatever reason, allowing the stupid flirting with the kid, right? Which is unbelievable.
Are you angry at the? Hold on. Are you angry at the character or like the storyline? Because I'm angry at the character, but I love the storyline.
Do you though? What? Okay, tell me what you like about the storyline.
There's a difference between liking it in a real world morality.
Sure, in terms
in terms of
manufactured TV drama,
Yes, in terms of manufactured entertainment drama, I have to say, we saw the flirting for a few episodes, right? And I kind of thought, like, okay, the guy's going to try to kiss her. She's going to shut it down, and that will be that.
And that'll be it.
And then they kissed, which I thought was like pushing the envelope. And she shut it down, and I thought, okay, that's going to be that. They're going to have kind of the awkward, hey, let's just kind of forget about it and move on. But then, and I think, like you talked about, like subverting expectations. This totally subverted my expectations where she's like, hey, lock the door, meet me downstairs. In terms of entertainment value, I love it. I mean, like, because I really never saw it escalating to that level. And it gets super weird now for 3 reasons. One, of course, she's got a kid who now somehow seems to have like an unhealthy crush on her. The kid is, of course, her son's former best friend. Yeah. And that guy now has lost both his parents. So, like, there's a lot of, like, weirdness going on there.
So, it's a little edible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why, let me tell you why I didn't like it, okay? You have this woman who is not just a woman who's owning a business, but she's kicking ass, right? She's killing it. You see, they made that point in that first episode where she's like, by the way, we're 1 month away from paying off our second mortgage this early, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So she's killing it, right? So great. Then you see, because in season 1, we made this point too, she was just Ed's wife, right? She was just the astronaut's wife. And the tension and the drama was a little bit like, oh, how do I handle my son when my husband is on the moon? Here, so she's transitioned from just being the wife of an astronaut and now an administrator to now also being a successful businesswoman. So successful to the point where she's able to negotiate a nearly $500,000 sale on her business, which in the 80s is no laughing sum, right? So that's when I knew something was going wrong, is when she decides to sell her bar, right? And so you could tell that, maybe she's a little tired. She's something, but like, where did this sense of ennui come from? What happened that all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm not happy in my marriage? What has Ed done this entire, and like, this is me 100% on Ed's side. Like, what did he do?
I agree. Look, we're all on Ed's side. I mean,
but
he's a
but this is what I mean. The reason it's so annoying is because she's a genuinely good actor. She had in my opinion, she had a very good role. And in that one episode, it went from, I am a successful woman, hear me roar, to, I have ennui, I'm bored with my life. My husband, who is maybe not perfect, but is still much better than every other man on this show so far, right? In terms of loving, in terms of caring, with the exception of maybe Molly's husband, who's also been stellar. And I think he was used very well this season, right? And then all of a sudden, she's just this wife who has an affair with a high school, a university student who's like 20 years her junior. And she's clearly, at the end of it, you can tell they're divorced because they go into separate cars. And she tells him on the eve of him on his mission to space. And you think, the reason I thought that was stupid was because it was manufactured drama. I thought that was going to be impetus for him to do something stupid in space. Yeah. Like, I have nothing left to live for. I thought he might die.
True.
Right?
Yep.
And B, it goes against everything that she was as a character. How do you go from being a strong character to being a bored housewife who does something so cliched as have an affair? That would be like if Ed turned around and said, you know what? I'm bored of my wife. I'm going to have an affair. It doesn't fit in either of those character traits or personalities.
All right. All right, Pete. First of all, you got to take a breath.
I am so upset with her. Honestly, she's so frustrating.
I feel your passion.
I didn't like Tracy at all in this season. As a character, very good. But I always sided with Gordo for whatever stupid reason, even though he messed up. I fully acknowledge, Gordo is the reason their marriage fell apart, not her, right? But for whatever reason, I felt bad for him, right? he's very sympathetic, and he made an effort.
He is very
and
sympathetic.
He was trying to right
pathetic.
his wrongs, and I felt like she was just throwing everything in his face. Right? Fine. Whether that's right or wrong, that's not the point. But at that moment, I was like, oh man, if anyone's gonna die, I hope it's Karen instead of Tracy, and I hope they switch roles. What the? Ah, man, that was so annoying.
Well, I hear you in terms of if this was real life, I would be the same way with you, and I've also felt this way about like characters, over different episodes where they really frustrate you. But I have to say, for me, I thought there was good entertainment value, so I'm not at all upset about it. And I think also there needed to be something else shook up for season 3. I mean, the Ed as the patient family man, I thought that storyline was just a little bit boring, to be honest. The family had like their spaghetti night or whatever. The daughter, obviously was, sometimes going to university or the Naval Academy. Then she was kind of looking for her real parents. And I just found that Ed's family life was not at all interesting. It was boring. I mean, and I don't say boring from a real life perspective. Those are all very interesting things. But from a television entertainment perspective, those are not compelling storylines to me. I think something needed to dramatically be shook up, and I think this is going to shake it up. I don't know where Ed goes from here. It seems like he's absolutely going to be single. Whether he takes in, Gordo's 2 kids, that could be compelling. Whether he starts a relationship with someone else at the agency, that could be compelling. But I thought that storyline had just kind of like run its course. I didn't really want another season 3 of Ed and Karen, the perfect family, sharing spaghetti night, while their perfect daughter was off at the Naval Academy. So I think this was a storyline by necessity, just to kind of keep things fresh.
Yeah, but I think what you're doing is you've effectively, because if you have to, if the writers and the directors,
it's a moral bankruptcy. That's really getting you.
Maybe that's why I'm furious. But I mean, but the reality is this, right? Yeah. Like if you have to choose between Ed's story and Karen's story as a writer, as a viewer, as a director. Yeah. I mean, you're 100% going to follow Ed. Yeah, you're not going to follow Karen because
Ed's a protagonist, so we need to have that sympathy for him, right? We need to look at him as a hero.
But that's my point. Is I feel like this was a really lazy way of fridging Karen, and I'm not saying that that's going to happen. Maybe she's a prominent player in series, right? Maybe. But you know the concept of being fridged, right?
I mean, I guess I kind of understand it, but say it.
Okay, so the quick and dirty backstory is that it comes from the comic books, and I think it was Green Lantern, right? And one of the impetuses for Green Lantern was that his girlfriend / wife, whatever it was, I can't remember, and maybe it's someone else, but for the sake of argument, let's call it Green Lantern, okay? In the comics, you find that one of the driving forces is that his girlfriend plays a very small role at the beginning of the series, of the comic, and she's literally murdered and put into a fridge. Her body is stored into a fridge, right? And it was kind of, that term has been co-opted in movies and by pop culture to imply that the driving force for the main character is the death or attack on the male protagonist's love interest. Right? So a good example of fridging in recent years is in Deadpool 2, where the only reason Deadpool 2, the only reason the movie happens the way it happens is because in the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of the storyline, his girlfriend is murdered, right? Or maybe, I'm pretty sure it was Deadpool, right? So that's an example of being fridged. In this case, if she is not a prominent player or at least has a significantly better story in series 3, right? And she's sidelined between in the show, she's effectively being fridged. And if she's being fridged because she had an affair with her son's best friend and destroyed what, at least in this universe, would be construed as a very good marriage, right? Right, but like, what on earth? Like, that is such a terrible way. I'd almost prefer if she were like, this is a terrible way to fridge a character who was as strong as she was in the first like 6 or 7 episodes. What a terrible way to do it.
Yeah.
Because it makes no sense. You can't go from being so strong for so long to just being this housewife who is filled with ennui to an adulterer. Like, it may, and the switch is like this. It happens overnight, literally overnight. You don't know why it's happened, you know? So it's just, anyway, that's fine. It's fine. We see what happens in series 3.
I love that this storyline has really pushed your buttons. I don't think I've ever talked to you about a character, and I have some characters that I really, really dislike in life, and that's a separate episode we should have. But there are some characters I really dislike, but I feel like I've never come across any character or storyline that you've disliked as much as this one.
I think it's because I really like her. No, that's the thing, right? Like, I thought she disappointed you. She really disappointed me.
It's
right.
painful.
I think it's because she was such a, as an actor, very good.
Give me another character. Give me another character who's disappointed you. Film or television. Man. Give me another character who's disappointed you.
Who's disappointed me? I'd have to really think about it, but there's been I'm sure there's more than one, but it's just if it doesn't go, because it's not about the philandering, it's not about the adultery, it's not about any of that, right? I'm watching Succession, I've watched Billions, I've watched all these other shows where you have very strong, powerful women and men, and it's not that I've been disappointed by the philandry aspect, right? Or with the adultery aspect. It's not that. It's because that's been in line with their character traits. And when your behavior aligns itself, it's very inconsistent and very inconsistent for no reason, right?
It's inconsistency.
Like, if she had done that in season 1 after her son died, before Ed comes back, that at least you're like, okay, I kind of understand, right? She just lost her son. She's blaming herself. She's seeking the solace of someone. Makes sense. Yeah. But everything else so far, I mean, like, it's such that quick flip I didn't get, and it just disappointed me. So I'll think about it. But that's actually an excellent premise for another episode. What other characters have disappointed you or have been really annoyed you for valid or invalid reasons?
I mean, there's a lot of characters. I think it's easy to identify characters that we do not like.
Yeah.
But it's harder to identify a character that I like them. You know, they were my friend. They were like my brother. And then they did something that hurt me because I'm no longer able to, like, respect them or, you know, look at them the way that I had previously.
Yeah, like,
like just like in real life with friends. I mean, that's a very hard thing when someone does something that disappoints you. You know, it's really hard to, you know, to process, to comprehend, to get it.
No, I agree. I very much agree. So that's anyway, that's my 2 cents on the whole Karen situation.
Yeah. But I'm thrilled for season 3. I mean, I just thought, again, season 2, the last few episodes were superb.
I think it made up for the relative stability of the first half of it. Yeah.
But I have to say, my concerns are they definitely need to introduce something new. I mean, this espionage thing, kind of relationship between Margot and her Russian counterpart is obviously going to play an element, but I have to say, unless they present it in a unique way, it's not really that interesting to me. And I'm worried about the bench. I mean, to lose both Gordo and Trace, and we lost Deke the season before. I mean, we're you know, Molly is...
We're running low on astronauts.
Yeah, I mean, we're kind of running low on astronauts, you know, and they haven't really gotten a young crew. You know, we talked about, like, this guy who wears the Navy hat. I mean, he's kind of soft-spoken. Alita's still not...
Potential, but we don't know. We don't know.
So, I mean, we need, like, some additional people, you know? There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I agree. That I agree. Let's see. I think you're on the right track. If they introduce a third nation or a third superpower, and you know, I don't want. I'll be very honest, I don't want it to be aliens. Like, I don't want there to be like, oh, we go on Mars and there's an alien substructure there. Like that, for a series so quote unquote grounded in reality, like that's the last thing I'd want to worry about. Or not worry, but that's the last thing I'd want to see is the two of them uniting, that the Russians and the Soviets reunite, or maybe at this point it's going to be Russia, not Soviets. But I don't want to see the U.S. and the Russians unite against an alien being. I want them to unite against China. India, I think, would be hilariously interesting.
You know, there could be another alternative, which is this also a little bit mirrors history, right? I mean, it's revisionist, but you can see like it's got Ronald Reagan in it. It talks a little bit about like the tensions in South America, which, you know, is kind of like the Nicaragua, like Contra affair, right? If this continues to follow, would you see that the Russia is bankrupt? It goes through its turmoil, right? Maybe Chernobyl somehow is linked into this, and suddenly the U.S. essentially like buys or like acquires, the Russian space program.
Yeah, or they become like like the ISS, right? You have the International Space Agency kind of situation, where you know what's going to be an interesting thing? Who's going to be president? Is it going to be Bush? Is it going to be Clinton? Where are we going to stand on that?
Because you're right, because we're going to fast forward probably another 5, 8, 10 years.
It's 10 years. It's 10 years. I think. Yeah. So yeah, I think it was 85, and then it goes to 95.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure the Lower Chiron said 1995, and you see the boot on Mars.
They're going to have to try to. First of all, everyone's going to look older, right? I mean, like Joel Kinnaman started as 26, and now he's going to be 46. Yeah. Right. I mean, from the time season 1 started, so in the span of 2 years, they have to give him like a 20-year range. So I mean, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure where it goes from here. I thought the espionage episode, that storyline was very good, kind of for season 2. It seems like it's going to be put off for season 3, but we still need a little bit of something here, whether it's cooperation, a third party. But I agree with you. I'm not super keen for monsters or aliens or something like that,
Yeah. For a series that's prided itself on being so grounded in alternate reality, but like a very close alternate reality, I wouldn't want there to be something that comes out of left field. And I think they're going to, and I don't expect them to do that. I think they're going to look at, let's look at the history of what's happened on the Earth between between 85 and 95. Let's implement elements of that in the show. Let's see how that could affect the Russian and the U.S. programs. Because you're right. The reality is that what they haven't really addressed, which you're starting to see, which they've been addressing in the U.S. Political scene in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years, is the monetary aspect. They talked about how in their version they're going private, right? The idea is that NASA is going to be a private agency, akin to SpaceX and Blue Origin of today, right? And that's how they're going to be able to fund their missions to Mars. But they don't really talk about the economic impact, which is to say of the rest, right? Like, we don't know who funds the Russian program. We don't know who funds the European program and how that's going to fundamentally alter. And maybe this is too nerdy for the scheme of the show, but that is an element, right? For a series that's talking about the politics, why wouldn't you talk about the finances as well? Right? Oh my God, what'll be interesting to see is if maybe they go and make oh my God, I can't remember her name. Maybe she becomes a politician, right? Because they alluded to that. Ellen, maybe she becomes the senator,
Ellen?
or a governor, or maybe she's running for president, which is something that they hinted at, right? I mean, it was the driving force as to why her girlfriend left her. Was, I think, that the reason she left her was because she knows that she will never be able to become anything important in terms of politics if she's.
I mean, I feel like I felt like that was a disappointing way to end things, which is, someone who, obviously won and born wasn't just happy, kind of like sharing the person that she purportedly loved, and forcing her to kind of make a decision, which is, hey, either your dream job or me. And I always think whether it's a man or a lady, that's kind of a selfish,
I think, and that's maybe, why I wasn't so disappointed.
Life isn't that clean, unfortunately. I mean, it should be, but I mean, there's a reason that there's the saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too, which is, take away like the sexual aspect of this, right? This has nothing to do with being a lesbian or not a lesbian. It's just about, hey, can you have a job and can you have a relationship at the same time? And those are two very difficult things to balance.
Yeah.
Of course, yes, being a lesbian in 1980, makes it more complicated, but the fact remains that they had a life. They were sharing it. They were living together. There were a lot of good things. There were a lot of challenges, just like almost any other relationship, work-life balance. So I feel like it's a little bit tough to say to someone like, hey, either take your job and I'm leaving, or leave your job and then we can be together. But even in like 1985, it's not like that easy to be together, right? I mean, there's still probably no gay marriage or all the other things that you have kind of in the modern era. So I felt like that was just kind of like doomed to fail, especially when you start to put these, like
conditions.
Choose me or, So I'm not that sad to see her go. I'm a little bit sad for Ellen, but at the same time, I feel like Ellen like made it very clear that this job is really her passion and it's something that she wanted. And to be honest, I mean, regardless of who offers you a job, you're flattered that the president gives you a job. If you really liked your partner and you really wanted to go run your family's business, I mean, go do it. I mean, no one's really stopping you, So I just didn't find that to be like a very emotional storyline. It was a good one, but it didn't really like cause me to break into tears or anything.
Yeah. And then again, it's not just that she loves her job. She's also very good at it, right? Which all the more reasons why, even if she wanted to leave, there will be a lot of forces preventing her from leaving, right? It's also, how easy is it to leave any job? Under normal circumstances, you can all leave your job, sure. But when you're like basically a government appointed job, a politician, a lot of scrutiny comes with that too, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So
you don't just put your 30-day notice and walk out.
Yeah, exactly. And certainly not without people asking why. Right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're at the top of your game, right? I kind of liked what they did with Nate Cordry's character, which is to say, okay, I'm leaving NASA. I'm now working for Boeing. We don't exactly know why. I think, again, maybe it's because they didn't have many things for him to do on the show, or, they didn't know what to write for him, because that effectively allowed him to be a very, very...
It minimized him. It really minimized him, right? And he kind of said, like, look, like, I want my personal life. I want to go somewhere. Presumably, he's making a lot of money. It seems to be a little bit cushy. He's got his own, like, private personal life, which obviously, he's enjoying. And I think it was a good way to minimize him in the show. And at the same time, like, still keep him for backstory when he was needed.
Yeah, I think we'll see. What'll be interesting is because, Boeing is famously one of the two biggest aeronautics companies in the world. I wonder if there's some teeing up for season 3 where maybe it's not a U.S. versus Russia. Maybe it's the government versus private business. Maybe it's Boeing who's going up into space.
Oh, I have to say, Pete, I like where your mind is going on this. I mean, maybe that's actually super cool. What if it's this dude who, unbeknownst to all of us, is kind of selling secrets from Boeing, and this is the rise of Airbus? We actually don't know how Airbus was created, right? Maybe this is the start of Airbus.
Right. So what if they say that, Boeing says, we want to acquire NASA. And we're going to make it not about science, but about space tourism. And your Ed becomes basically a glorified like concierge or pilot. This is very off the top of my head. This makes no sense. But what I'm saying is, if we want to see Nate Cordry come back in, if we want to talk about why he would leave NASA to work for Boeing, I mean, certainly the private life is a part of it. His private lifestyle is a part of it. His sexuality is a part of it. But maybe there's more to it, right? Because by all means, he I'm not saying he's a good actor or a bad actor. We haven't seen enough of him to really justify whether we like him or dislike him.
Yeah, true. Absolutely true. Pete, I like right. Where your head is at on this. I like where your head is at.
Thank you.
But Pete, we have to talk about your namesake, Peter Parker.
Oh my God, Peter Parker. That's right.
Right, because now the newest installment of Spider-Man is out, right? Spider-Man.
Yeah.
No Way Home. No Way Home.
As of taping, it's out next week.
Okay. So if we're just laying things out before we dive into this, there's a few things that we have to see that we need to discuss. We need to see the new Ghostbusters, which you have seen. I have not.
I have.
We both have to see The Matrix, which is not yet out.
Neither of us have seen. I think that's out on the 20-something, 25th or so. So in 2 weeks or so.
And now we both have to go see the new Spider-Man, No Way Home, which neither one of us have seen. But I think we should prepare ourselves for it because Spider-Man, both comics and cinematically, if that's a word, has a very long history. And I think it's really important to kind of unravel where we've been and where we're going with this franchise, which is governed not just by creativity, but to be honest, by legal issues, right? I mean, the Sony, Marvel relationship, has basically governed this. And one of the things I did not know that when I was doing my research in advance of the show is that Sony only keeps the rights to Spider-Man if it puts out a standalone movie not less than 5.75 years. So at least once every 5.75 years, they have to release a standalone Spider-Man movie.
Correct. Otherwise they lose the rights. That's exactly That's what happened to Blade. They not Sony. I think it was Fox who owned Blade. They lost the rights to Daredevil because of that clause in that contract. When Marvel went broke, or was about to go broke, and they licensed off their characters, that was the one thing they put into their clauses was if you don't make the movies about them, you lose the rights to them.
So is that the history of Spider-Man? Which is, if it's a Marvel character, Marvel went through some tough times, not clear why, but they went through some tough times we all know about. And Stan Lee, the founder, the creator, licensed off Spider-Man to Sony, and Sony has owned it ever since, which is why it was such a big deal when there's a collaboration to bring it back into MCU for Civil War, for Endgame 1, Endgame 2, and now apparently in this newest installment, they've got Doctor Strange, so they're still kind of incorporating some of that MCU. But this seems to be the end of the road of the cooperation between MCU and Sony, right?
So it's interesting you say that because just a few days ago, Amy Pascal, the head of Sony's films division, right, made a very off-the-cuff remark that gained a lot of press was, this is not the end of Spider-Man as you know it, the way we, and by we she means the royal we, see it. We see at least another 3 movies of Spider-Man in the MCU. So she was, and while nothing formally has been declared, I imagine they're already in talks to make Spider-Man 4, 5, and 6 within the MCU, or as a part of the MCU.
What do you mean? What do you mean 4, 5, and 6? You mean like there's
sorry,
Homecoming,
let me clarify
that. Homecoming, Far From Home, No Way Home, and now there's going to be 3 more after this along the same themes.
That's right. They're going to do another trilogy that combines Spider-Man in the MCU
with Tom Holland.
He's
going to be a very old Spider-Man if he's going to have 6 under his belt, right?
No, but having said that, it's a natural progression for the character because, I mean, in the comics, he's no longer a teenager, right? He's no longer that awkward high schooler with spider powers. Yeah. Not that I've read a Spider-Man comic in decades, but the reality is, from what I last saw, a quick recap was that he actually created his own tech company that rivals Stark Enterprises. He's not in terms of money, but in terms of technology. in the comics. So he's not that kid anymore, at least in the comics. He's still Spider-Man, and you have to also remember, or maybe you also have to realize, the Spider-Man comics, there's like 10 different Spider-Man, right? There's so many different Spider characters out there now that they can perpetually go to a well of younger characters, and I strongly suspect in movies 4, 5, and 6, they're going to introduce Miles Morales.
Who's Miles Morales?
Miles Morales is the other Spider-Man who actually coincides with the Amazing Spider-Man in New York. There's a second Spider-Man. And he's the Spider-Man that's in the black and red suit. If you watch the Into the Spider-Verse cartoon, the animated movie, that was the protagonist. That's Miles Morales. Oh. So I imagine that the MCU will integrate Miles Morales. And if you remember Spider-Man 1 with Tom Holland in Homecoming, you saw Miles Morales' uncle, Donald Glover, the guy who he spiderwebs his arm to the car. That's actually Donald Glover plays the Prowler, who's the bad guy, who's the villain in the cinematic universe, or in the comic universe, and his nephew is Miles Morales. So they've laid the seeds. I'm not saying it'll necessarily happen, but I expect to see Miles Morales, and if not Miles Morales, I expect to see, now that there's going to be the multiverse in the MCU, I'd expect to see Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen. I don't actually remember what her real name is.
But isn't Gwen, Gwen was in the first one, right? Gwen was in the first one as the daughter of Michael Keaton, is that correct?
That wasn't Gwen. That was just, from what I understand, and I'm, again, please, comic book nerds, don't go after me. But my understanding is that she was just a normal character.
Hold on, maybe we need to look this up. But that's a very interesting point, because I thought that was Gwen. Because I'm also, the comics, there are basically two love interests, right? There's MJ and there's Gwen. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
In an alternate universe, Gwen Stacy becomes Spider-Man or Spider-Woman or whatever her character's name is in that alternate universe, right? And she loses Peter Parker, like how Peter Parker loses Gwen Stacy in the comics, in his universe. So my understanding, so they have doesn't matter, right. Irrelevant. The point is that if they go with this multiverse route, which they're clearly opening up with Doctor Strange 2 and with this Spider-Man, with the third Spider-Man, for the listeners out there, let's clarify, we're not including the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire or the 2 Spider-Man movies with Andrew Garfield. Because we're just talking about the Tom Holland Spider-Man.
So, but let me put this in perspective, because I think this is the way that I understand it, which is they did the 3 with Tobey Maguire. And then they basically did a reboot with
with the Amazing Spider-Man with Andrew Garfield.
With Andrew Garfield, right? It was 3 and then it was 2, but they didn't follow anything. It basically, with Andrew Garfield, it kind of reimagined things, right? And
that's right.
For a lot of different reasons, right? But it wasn't intended to be 3 different, or wasn't intended to be a sequence. It was intended to be, forget you ever met Tobey Maguire. Andrew Garfield is Spider-Man, and that's right. This is how he got his.
That's right, and this is why they had to do the movies. Exactly, this is why they had to do the movie because they knew they had to do a movie every 6 years or 5 years or whatever it was, right? So they were like, "Look, we have to do this." Tobey Maguire's old. It was famous that it was famously well known that he had bad back issues because of this, and he really hurt his back badly, and so he wasn't able to reprise, or he was unwilling to, or there was some reticence on him reprising his role for a Spider-Man 4, and so they were just like, you know what, screw it, let's get a younger actor, let's just reboot the whole franchise.
Okay, so they rebooted with Andrew Garfield. Why do you think they stopped at 2?
Because it was terrible. They weren't that good, and they didn't make any money. Well, relatively speaking, They still made hundreds of millions of dollars, but I mean, it was critically
so then they started it back, but they did something pretty clever, I think, which is rather than starting all all over again with a standalone Spider-Man. Remember, they introduced him in Civil War, right?
So this is an interesting story.
They first introduced Tom Holland in Civil War.
Yeah. So this is interesting because at the time, Sony was losing money hand over foot as a studio. They had made a string of flops, and
like what?
Irrelevant. The point was that critically bad movies, financially bad movies. Like they had just made a ton of things.
Yeah.
And Amy Pascal was. I think this was around the same time as The Interview. Remember when that got hacked by the North Koreans?
Yes.
It was just like one piece of bad news after another. And Amy Pascal was like there, and again, this is all Hollywood rumor. Like it was like known in the industry. She was known as being like a battle axe, and people didn't like her. Like she was a bad personality. She was caught with emails leaks, bad mouthing actors and directors, and it was just like she became persona non grata. Right. So even though she's the head of like one of the big 5 studios at the time. Like people didn't like her, and like she came off, and generally it's understood, whether this is true or not, I don't know, but it's understood that she's not a well-liked person in Hollywood, or wasn't. There was a lot of pressure at the time because Marvel had just been acquired by Disney. Has been making movies which were like, $1 billion each in revenue or more. So there was a lot of pressure by Disney shareholders maybe, or by just fans of the MCU to Disney saying, you have the money, start buying your characters back. Make them a part of the cinematic universe, right? Because what Marvel did really well was to say, well, we don't have any of our A tier. The X-Men franchise is with Fox, and Spider-Man is with Sony. So we have a bunch of B tier and C tier characters. Let's try to make them A tier characters. And to their credit, they smashed on all of them, right? Iron Man is now an A tier character, even though traditionally in the old school comics, at best he was a B tier character. Ant-Man, at best, a C tier character. All these characters. So again, Hulk was A tier, but Hulk was with Universal Pictures, not with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So there was a lot of problems there, right? So
what about Hulk? Wasn't Hulk always A tier?
And Hulk, by the way, I think was only A tier, or maybe at lowest B tier, because of Lou Ferrigno's Hulk TV show, which was relatively a pop culture success, right? One of the few comic book successes in television and cinema history. So the point was that Disney said, there was a lot of pressure by fans and shareholders to Disney to say, listen, you now have a couple $2 billion, and you have the power of Disney behind you to write you a check for any amount. Go to Sony, buy Spider-Man. Go to Fox, buy the X-Men back. And to their credit, Disney said, okay, we'll buy Fox. And they automatically got all of the X-Men characters and all of the characters back, right? And that's not to say that they did it because, people like me sent them tweets that sent out tweets that said you should do that. I'm sure there was a good financial reason for doing so. And clearly, economically, it made great sense for them to have all of them under one. So theoretically, Spider-Man and so Hulk isn't 100% with them. Hulk, I believe the rights are still with Universal. I'm not 100% sure because it's complicated. No, Sony is Columbia. Sony Columbia merged, not Sony Universal. And Sony has Spider-Man. And then I think everybody else is back into the MCU.
So what's missing from Marvel? Is it only Spider-Man, or is there someone else missing from Marvel?
At one of the Comic Cons before Civil War started filming, and I think this is, post Avengers 1 success, or Avengers 2 success, they said they approached, and I don't know who approached who, but Disney and Sony started talking, and they said, "Look, your last Sony film was a critical flop
because all Sony films are distributed.
All these things do nothing for Sony as a movie studio.
So Universal has Hulk, and
merchandise and franchising rights belong to Disney. Only the character rights and movie rights belong to Sony.
Okay.
So if the movie does really well, Disney still profits because Disney gets to get all the money from any toys they make, right? So Sony said, whatever it was, there was an agreement made to say that, okay, we're still going to own the rights to Spider-Man, but what we're going to do is we're going to co-finance the next Spider-Man movies, and that'll allow us to let you put Spider-Man into the MCU, and you agree to that. So my understanding is, and I don't know what the ratio is, but let's assume for the sake of argument, it's 50-50. Whatever money Marvel decides to spend on making a Spider-Man movie, Sony foots 50% of it and gets 50% of the growth. But that allows, and what they said is all creative control goes to the MCU, right? Because the thing is that Sony had creative control over the last 5 Spider-Man movies, and 3 of those 5 Spider-Man movies were pretty bad. So they said, okay, fine. And then that allowed that formula to happen, where Sony said, okay, but then in turn, we want to see MCU movies in the standalone movies, which is why you had Iron Man in Spider-Man 1, and why you had Nick Fury in Spider-Man 2, as well as, what's his face? Mephisto. Yeah. Not Mephisto, the guy with the fishbowl head. Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, yeah. Mysterio.
Sorry. My God, I'm losing my nerd credentials.
So there's one more thing that's important to say, which is with Spider-Man, there's like hundreds of characters that relate to Spider-Man, right? Which is why Sony has Venom as well.
Well, yeah, Spider-Man related villains. That's right.
Right. So
you have Venom.
It's Spider-Man.
What's the guy Jared Leto is playing? And then you have Craven, who I think is going to be in the next who could potentially be in the next standalone. Or there are rumors that he's going to play a part. So there's quite a few standalone Spider-Man villains which have got their own movies. And I think what they're going to do is that with the MCU, you know what I bet they're going to do for 4, 5, and 6? I take it all back. I think they're going to do an Avenger-style movie for 4, 5, and 6, where it's going to be Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. We've already seen...
Who are the Sinister Six?
Who
are the Sinister Six?
So Spider-Man has a great villains, a rogues gallery. And one of what they did in the comic book series is that all of the Spider-Man villains got together and said, all right, well, I wasn't able to take him out alone. You weren't allowed to take him out alone. Why don't we team up? Right? And so they were called the Sinister Six. It had Electro, Vulture, and blah, blah, blah. There was like a bunch of them. Right? So, and they all got together.
There's something there's something interesting about, Spider-Man, which I think Spider-Man has the best list of enemies, right? Or supervillains.
Yeah, interesting. His rogues gallery for me is one of the better ones because their characters have generally been nuanced. But Batman's rogues gallery is also pretty killer. Even though that's a DC thing. But I think in the DC universe, Batman's rogues gallery is pretty good.
Vulture, Dr. Octopus, Sandman, Lizard, Electro, Mysterio, Green Goblin, Scorpion, Rhino, Shocker.
So all of them have either already been in the Spider-Man movies, or they're going to be they're going to be a part of it. So I think they're going to build a Sinister Six movie, and I expect Venom, because Venom's not a part of the Sinister Six. And traditionally, Venom is kind of like, in the comics, he's been a bad guy, but also at the same time like an anti-hero, right? So I think what they're going to do is, because in the last Venom movie, spoiler alert, at the end credit sequence, they integrated the Tom Hardy Venom into the MCU. So I think what's going to happen is it's going to be Venom and Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six. At the end of the 6th movie. I think that's what they're building up to. So that's my gut feeling, is that's what they're going to do. There's no downside for Sony because they get to continue keeping the rights to the thing. So basically it's one of the few rare instances, and this is me speaking as an outsider, where it seems like there's a win-win for everybody. Yeah. Marvel continues making great movies that add to their library of the MCU. They get to continue selling merchandise, right? And for Sony, they finally get to consider the Spider-Verse as their version of the MCU, and they get to have their own version of it that's making them money.
I like where your bolt line this is going. Yeah, I think that now that I'm looking at the list of the villains, right, for Spider-Man, who else has a good roster of villains, right? The Rogues Gallery. Who else? You mentioned Batman, but Batman has Joker, Penguin, Riddler.
No, Joker and Riddler.
Riddler are the same. Joker and Riddler are separate. Mr.
100% Catwoman, although she's become like not
Catwoman.
A good guy, but she's also become like their version of the anti-hero.
Yeah, now she's kind of good. Yeah.
You have
Who else is Batman villain?
You have Two-Face. You have
Two-Face. Yeah.
What's his face? The guy who was the bad guy in Hush, who steals everyone's face. You have Calendar Man, who theoretically is not a great villain, but I've heard it. I haven't read any of the comics with him, but is also supposed to be good. You have Condiment King, which is hilarious. Yeah. If you want to see Batman's full Rogues Gallery, actually the movie that I highly recommend to you is Lego Batman. Yeah, Lego Batman and they have the full villains Rogues Gallery in there, and they're very good. Oh, Bane, he's an excellent one. I
have seen Lego Batman. It's amazing.
In terms of rivaling.
Bane. Yeah. But Bane is different than Ra's al Ghul, right?
Also different. Ra's al Ghul is someone different. Yeah. But you have Ra's daughter, Talia. She's also there. Yeah. I mean, in terms of Rogues Galleries, I think Batman's is deeper by volume. But my personal preference, and this is my Marvel bias coming into play, I think my personal preference is in terms of nuance, it's Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. Yeah.
It's incredible how much they've created, though. Yeah.
The reality also is nowadays is that the Rogues Galleries on both sides, DC's and MCU's, have blended so much because Kingpin, famously known as one of Daredevil's rogues, is also Spider-Man rogue. So they've all mixed, and that comes with a lot of MCU's characters are based in New York, right? So inevitably you're going to have run-ins with the same bad guys between different heroes, and vice versa.
All right, so let's go back to Spider-Man. So we think that after this one, No Way Home, we're gonna have at least 3 more with Tom Holland.
3 more standalone with Tom Holland. Yeah. I expect that, and by standalone I mean the Sony side of it, right? Mm-hmm. So let's demarcate it even further and say you have 2 kinds of Spider-Man movies. You have movies which are not about Spider-Man but within the MCU purview. So like Avengers, like Civil War, Avengers. Yep. And so you have Tom Holland continuing to appear in those movies, right? Yeah. And then in terms of quote unquote standalone movies, I expect we're going to see 4, 5, and 6 based on the comments Amy Pascal made a couple days ago. And I expect that you'll see some, and in those standalone movies, I expect that we'll see some of the MCU family come into that. But I expect that the Rogues Gallery is going to be strictly within the standalone MCU. Standalone Spider-Man verse. I don't think they're going to be from the MCU.
So on the MCU side, what are the next movies coming out on the MCU side?
So you've got Blade, you've got Black Panther 2, you've got Guardians 3, you've got... I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm not going by any specific order. What else do you have? They had a couple of unannounced movies, which I think will become announced. So Doctor Strange 2 we know about. What else is out? I strongly expect within the next 3 or 4 MCU movies, I strongly expect the allusion to Fantastic to be made. Somehow, I was hoping that the TV shows would have done it. Well, and then I strongly expect X-Men within the next 10 movies. And not to come out as a movie, but to be teased.
What about X-Men?
And then one of those unannounced movies could be an X-Men movie or a Fantastic Four movie, but I think they'll go Fantastic Four first.
Yeah. So I'm looking at what we've got here. I'm looking, and this is subject to change, but Morbius is supposed to come out in January. Doctor Strange is supposed to come out in May. Thor is supposed to come out in July.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They're filming Thor as well. That's right. Love and Thunder.
Yep. Black Panda, Wakanda Forever, a year from now, November. Who's going to be Black Panther in here?
I have zero idea of what they're going to do with that. I have zero idea, and that's why I'm very excited. So rumors are that his younger sister Shuri is going to be the new Black Panther. That's the rumors, but what I had really hoped for, but I don't think they're doing it because what they've announced a different TV series. So what I really hoped for was that she was going to become the new Iron Man. I thought because she has the smarts and they have the tech capability. So I thought so in the comics, the Iron Man successor is called Iron Heart. And it's this girl on the West Coast, if I remember correctly. I haven't read the comics. I think they're going to
then Captain Marvel, right? Brie Larson.
Captain Marvel 2, sure. Where they're I think bringing out the newest Captain Marvel, the Kamala Khan.
This is February 2023. That's a long way from now. And then Guardians of the Galaxy is May 2023. That's 18 months from now.
They haven't even started filming yet.
Ant-Man and the Wasp,
Quantumania, that's right,
is July 2023. I mean, this is a good 20 months from now. And then
this is about right. They usually only release 3 movies a year, 2 to 3 movies a year, right?
Yeah. And then we go. Blade is unreleased, and then everything is a little bit fuzzy after that. I agree.
We know that Captain America, the new one's going to come out with the Falcon as Captain America. Yeah. You know that Deadpool is going to be reintroduced. Deadpool 3 is going to be introduced, and they've confirmed that he's going to be a part of the MCU and that he's going to be an R-rated movie, which blows my mind. I don't know how they're going to do it. I have no idea how they're going to do it. So there's what they did smartly and also annoyingly when they had their release schedule. The movies they knew they were going to release at certain dates, they put the logos and the names, but they also had a bunch of titles to be announced movies on that list. So they had release dates for movies they didn't even know what they were going to release or that they weren't willing to disclose. And for example, what I understood is that Blade was one of those movies that got filled into a release date where they were like to be announced. And I expect that one of those to be announced movies is going to be, again, a Fantastic Four movie, which I can't wait to see, and an X-Men movie, which obviously will be.
So we're looking at Fantastic Four. I mean, which has to be entirely recast, right? We're looking at Fantastic Four in end of 2023 at the earliest.
At best.
So we have no idea who's going to be.
And that again is predicated purely because what they'll do is they'll tease Sue Storm or Reed Richards in one of the mid credits or after end credit scenes in one of the movies, right? And they'll only do that if they know who Reed Richards is and who Sue Storm is.
So MCU is going strong. We see no letting up, at least in the next 24 months.
So they've got 4. So we're in phase 4 of the MCU now. The hilarious news, which I'm really excited about, is that Keanu Reeves wants to be a part of the MCU.
Really?
Yeah, he went out and said it. He said, "I think they're doing something that no one has ever done in cinema before, and I would love to be a part of that." Right. So my question is, let me ask you this. Let's do a tangent. One of our tangents. If you could cast Keanu Reeves as anyone in the MCU, who would you cast him as?
I mean, it has to be a new character then, right?
Yes, as a new character. Right? We've just talked about a bunch of movies that we don't even know about. So X-Men or Fantastic Four, is there someone you see Keanu Reeves playing?
I don't know. Who would you see him as?
Initially, I thought of him as Reed Richards. But
does that match up age-wise?
You hit the nail on the head. I think they need someone a little younger, a little bit more physically, and I'm not saying he's not because he clearly is, but someone who's a little bit more physically aligned. So, you know who I actually think could be a good Reed Richards? John Krasinski.
Oh, that's interesting.
Young, handsome as all hell, fit. Yeah. You saw him in Jack Ryan, right? Yeah. I think he would be, and in A Quiet Place, I think he'd be a great Reed Richards. And you know what would be hilariously good? Emily Blunt as Sue Storm. Real life husband-wife team playing an on-screen husband-wife team.
Look, if they were going to bring in Keanu Reeves, the time to do this, honestly, would have been Eternals. right? Eternals was I think a chance to kind
of, he could have played a statesman.
Right? That would have really like introduced like a bunch of people. That was the time when maybe that's one of the problems with the Eternals, is that if that's when they're introducing new characters, that there's really no one from that Eternals group who I feel like has a lot of longevity individually, right?
But here's my feeling, is that the characters themselves are so obscure. Yeah. Do you want someone so famous playing someone so obscure, right? Because there's always a chance that it doesn't do well.
Yeah, it's true. But it cuts both ways, right? If you really say, like, look, let's introduce someone new. Eternals is our, gateway to doing that. And let's have Keanu Reeves, be one of the Eternals and have him take a very prominent role. Just like
I think you'd want to have someone who's like a B tier, like in the Guardians of Galaxy. All four of them well-established actors, but none of them were stratospherically famous.
True. But that's what you told me about Jon Snow, right? Now Jon Snow's going to take a bigger part in Eternals,
that's right? Maybe not Eternals, but maybe in the Blade movie.
Right, somehow. What do you think of Hawkeye? We've never talked about Hawkeye. Do you think we should add a Hawkeye episode?
We definitely should. The 4 episodes are out. I think there's another 2 in there. I'm not going to say anything, but they just did a very interesting crossover. I'm very intrigued by where it goes. I must say, I'm actually enjoying it so far.
I'll tell you this. If it wasn't for you, I would say that I'm not very excited about it. And the reason is, even though I really like Jeremy Renner, and of course I really like the character in the Avengers, I felt that the tone of this show, and I've only watched 2 episodes, so I'm going to continue on based on your recommendation, but I felt like the tone of this show is not really clear. Like, is it supposed to be kind of funny and goofy? Is it supposed to be serious and action-packed? I feel like I'm just kind of caught in the middle of what this is supposed to be. And there's a little bit too much kind of like goofiness and silliness. I mean, Marvel always has jokes, which is I mean,
one of their hallmarks, right?
It's one of their hallmarks. It's what we want. We want it to be a little bit light sometimes, the quips. But I feel like this is a little bit too silly and goofy, at least now. And the action is there, but again, it's just not clear to me where this is going. So I would have ordinarily stopped had this not been branded Hawkeye and had you not, said like it's getting good. There's some character introductions, but I feel like this has just started a little bit like slow and not compelling for me. But I'll continue on and let's see if it redeems itself. But right now, I'm not hooked yet.
Generally speaking, for the MCU TV shows, in general, they've been very hit or miss, and some of them have been outright bad. And this one, I think, so far is middle of the road. Yeah. The way I see the show so far is that it's like let's call it a 6 episode or a 7 episode. I don't know how many episodes there are of Die Hard. If you took Die Hard the movie and made it over 6 or 7 episodes, that's what I get the feeling is. Like this is. It's an us versus the world situation.
I love that idea. By the way, I love that idea. Can we please make Die Hard?
Right, but it's based in Christmas. There's Bruce Willis had a lot of quips in that movie. There was some great action sequences in that movie. Yeah. It was about one man versus a crime syndicate. Indeed. Here it's about 2 people versus a crime syndicate. You have a little bit of back and forth. So it's like a mix of Lethal Weapon with the buddy cop banter, a little bit of Die Hard, but in episodic form. It's set in the MCU. The reason so far I'm enjoying it, is because
you like Renner.
It's a part of the MCU, and kind of you always have to watch these shows. The MCU is so good that it's kind of like the Apple of cinematography. Is even if it's a bad product, you kind of have to get it just to keep up with it.
I mean, I absolutely agree with that. They've done something very good, which is they've made it compelling to watch these one-off series. So that you don't miss anything, so that you understand what's going on, so that when you do see a feature movie that you're excited about, that you don't miss anything and you catch all the backstory.
Any reference, any nothing, which, and Endgame and Infinity War were a testament. Yeah. Endgame especially, because it basically took 22 movies and referenced all of them in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And if you watched all 22 of those movies, and if you did your homework, you got an A+ because you were able to say, I understand that reference, right? A throwback to Cap in Avengers 1. So for me, that was that's half the reason you watch these shows. And if it turns out to be a good show, all the better for you. If it turns out to be not a great show, fine. Just consider it as, eating broccoli with dinner. You have to do it because your mom made it, right? And so for me, I think what's interesting is that for the Hawkeye show is he's an Avenger, but he's not superpowered. He doesn't have a suit made of metal. He has nothing, right? So you get to see like the human element or the human cost of what it means to be an Avenger. And they really dig deep into that. Well, not deep, but they dig into that, right? In a way that no movie would ever allow you to do. You saw a little bit of that in Age of Ultron, like you briefly touched upon that, but you don't really see much of this in the Hawkeye show. And there's one more twist that I'm hoping for in terms of, not a shocking twist, but just another character twist that I'm hoping for, but I will keep that to myself until that series is over and we discuss it.
Oh, a very rare no spoiler. But look, we've got a few things to follow up on now, right? So I've got to see Ghostbusters, and then we can have a Ghostbusters breakdown.
Oh, where we talk about 1, 2, and 3.
We've got to see Matrix, and I think we need a huge Matrix breakdown. We may even need a pre-Matrix, just like we did for Spider-Man now, right? I mean, because there's so much to kind of like remember, so that I think we understand, because this is going to be, I think, a very critical movie, but I think we really need to get a good grasp on what happened in 1, 2, and 3. So I think we need to recap Matrix before we see Matrix. We just did a recap of Spider-Universe before we see Spider-Man. Then we could do the Ghostbusters recap. And what else do we have coming up that's of real interest to us? We can talk about Succession. We can talk about Yellowstone.
Succession will be an interesting... I just saw the first 2 episodes of Yellowstone.
Right. We're getting somewhere.
I got to tell you, so far, I must admit, not super compelled.
Oh, okay.
Not super compelled. It seems like a good drama, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
And of course, that's also with the strength of Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
It also seems weird to see Kevin Costner as not necessarily a good guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He plays like whatever. It's irrelevant so far.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stick it through season 1.
Yeah.
But whether I continue thereafter, to be determined, based on how season 1 goes.
TBD.
At the moment, not certain. Not liking all the characters, I gotta say.
This is a change your pace show, right? I mean, it's a little bit contrarian in terms of what they've done, right? I mean, like, everything out there is that we're watching, at least, is urban based or science fiction based, right? And I kind of like, whether or not you find the show compelling or not, I mean, that's a matter of personal taste, but they've obviously taken a little bit of a contrarian view, which is, hey, let's just strip away all this other stuff and let's just make it in big sky, right? And let's do the opposite with big trucks and big branches in Texas and big belt buckles and all the other things. I like, from a creative point, what they've done, because, I mean, if you're not into sci-fi, if you're not into a universe, for the majority of people don't watch nearly as much entertainment as you and I do, right? I mean, we're definitely outside the norm, right? I mean, there's certainly some people that can talk more authoritatively on Spider-Man, on MCU, on any individual character than we can, but generally we are kind of, in that 1%. So for, anyone else who doesn't have the time to kind of catch up on everything and isn't interested in watching, Loki, for example, where they just don't understand what's going on, Yellowstone, I think, is something that appeals to people who just want something that's a little bit different. In there's a lot of things, whether it's, Warner or Marvel, they're doing a lot of things now that are maybe not similar in terms of character, but just in terms of themes there's a lot of similarities. And if you're not into that genre, there's not a lot of other choices on Netflix or other places if you're looking for something at a different pace. So
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I hesitate to call it a niche program, but in that sense it is, because, obviously you don't get to call yourself a niche program if you've got an A-list star like Kevin Costner
it's big budget,
your lead.
Sure. Yeah.
But in that sense, you're absolutely right, in the sense that what they're saying is, look, the themes are there. It's the same theme as you'd find in a show like Succession, but instead of being based in New York City, we're going to be based in the middle of nowhere in Montana or Utah or in wherever they film it. And I don't mean this in a derogatory way or in a condescending way at all, but we're going to cater to that middle America who's not interested in space monsters or in science and technology. They're more interested in interpersonal human relationship without any of the glitz and I don't want to say glitz and glamour in a bad way again, but in the sense that without that pomp and circumstance, let's put it that way, right? I want to see the nitty gritty of real life, and I have no doubt in my mind.
I agree. I agree.
All of these plots come from a real place, right? In the sense that there must be cowboys out there in the middle of America, in the Midwest, in the southern parts of America, who have undergone these kinds of trauma and drama in their lives.
Trauma and drama. I agree with that. And I think, to be honest, there's less clutter in this market. I mean, if we were pitching a show, I'm sure so many people have heard, hey, we're the next Game of Thrones, or we're Game of Thrones. But
in space.
Yes.
That's exactly right.
And that's a crowded market, first of all. And it's also, there's only one Game of Thrones. You can't catch that lightning in a bottle again. And it's too big to do, right? So I think that rather than kind of chasing all those other things, which is a very crowded market, and there's only so much bandwidth, right, in that pie, that it's unique what Yellowstone has done just to go in a totally different direction. And I think if you and I were pitching a show, we said, hey, let's, one of the reasons maybe Ozark was so popular, right? Right? That was a show that still had a lot of great elements in it in terms of intrigue. But Ozark was cool because it was like, hey, it's in a weird place, it's something different. It's not in New York. It's not in Los Angeles. It's not in Chicago. And I think that there is a niche if you can do it right. Both those shows had A-listers, right? Jason Bateman, to lead Ozark. If you can kind of get that formula right and still do compelling writing, storyline, in terms of production value, it doesn't have to be in skyscrapers, urban settings, all the other complicated shots and so forth. You can just do it in more down-to-earth places. So I think there is a place for that, but again, probably not room for 3 Ozarks or 3 Yellowstones. But if you did something, interesting in kind of, an island in Hawaii, it would probably work. If you did something, how about Breaking Bad, right? In New Mexico, there's a room for those things, but they have to be done extremely well for it to, get a loyal audience.
So if we're going to do a very, very generic thing, Ozark is kind of like the financial Breaking Bad of the Ozarks. And so far, and you'll know, you can correct me, or because you've seen more of it, I get the feeling that Yellowstone is like the Succession of Montana.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to phrase it.
So what's the show we're writing? And where are we basing it off of?
Well, someone's already done Fargo, so we can't do Fargo.
And Fargo is Fargo.
How about Key West? But
what's the premise, or what's the hook?
Let's make that to be determined. But I think that Key West is a very interesting location because it is secluded. It's part of the United States. It's got picturesque settings. It's close enough to Cuba that maybe we can have some intrigue, with those Caribbean islands there as well. So I'm
Actually, that's a good point, is what are the interesting locations? I think of Alaska. You think of Key West.
Alaska has to be based on what?
No, but that's my point.
Oil.
It can be an oil thing. Yeah. It can be a mineral play. It could be a hunting play. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I don't know if there's a lot, but there, in terms of, I'm trying to think of out there locations that you don't normally see on TV, right? Like, I mean, when you say Key West to me, I still think Florida, right? Although you're right, it is a little bit more obscure, even for Florida.
Alaska automatically has like brand recognition. It has some, I wouldn't say negative connotation, but it has limited connotation. But just in terms of like the brand, everyone knows of Alaska, right?
Oh, maybe you could do it in Canada. It could be like Edmonton's a big city, but in that side of Alberta, Yeah. Anyway, interesting thought.
To be determined. To be continued. Pete, to be continued.
To be determined. I mean, I don't know if you've gotten there before I have or not, but I think the point of this podcast is by the end of it, you and I are either writing a hit movie or a hit TV series, or a hit TV series based on the hit movie.
First, let's write a series of short stories that turns into a book, that turns into a movie, that turns into a TV series.
I'm just saying, which then turns into wait, a musical on Broadway.
Wait for it.
Turns out for a musical on
Broadway. A Broadway musical.
And then that allows us to get an Emmy, a Golden Globe, an Oscar, and a Tony, and that gives us our shot at being EGOTs.
And let's make up a new one as well. There's got to be like a MTV Kids' Choice Award. Right? Always won by, a MEGOT. MTV got. I'm in, Pete. I'm in.
Sounds good. All right, perfect. So unless there's any other news or any other business.
I think we've closed the business for today. But please join us for next time. Pete and I will go through the new Spider-Man, No Way Home. We'll go through the new Ghostbusters, Legacy. And if we're lucky, we'll do a recap on The Matrix 1, 2, and
That's right.
3.
Or 1 and the other 2 that we may not necessarily need to want to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Mostly 1 and a little bit of 2 and 3.
Perfect.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Pete. Have a good one.
We'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.